sleeping and waiting for what the next day has to present. And so here on Good Morning Uganda, we ensure that we keep you up to speed with that information. But that said, let me check on the team to see how they are doing. And of course, it's full house today. Olive Monica Najuma is right here, and Robert Chirabo Nyonyintono is in Studio B. And well, of course, we are here to make sure that your Tuesday morning is one that is quite unforgettable. Let me start off with Olive Monica Najuma, but first to welcome her back and also to see how she's doing this morning. Good morning, Olive.
Well, good morning, Jerome. How are you doing?
I am well. Tuesday, the elections in the US, so here we are.
Well, I'm excited about the elections, and I don't really care for Trump, but at the same time, this time round, I'm like, whoever wins, let the best man or woman win. But the election has had, of course, many tongues wagging. There is counter accusations that have been going on, and unlike other elections, Jerome, this time round we may not get to know who the winner is until late night or early morning. That would be like tomorrow, because we are in a different time zone. But also it's because the two candidates, that is Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, have been going neck to neck, cutting edge stuff here. So we may not know who the actual winner is, because even opinion polls have always left just a little difference. So it's exciting. And also we might expect a recount in swing states like in Pennsylvania if none of the candidates gets at least 1%. The last time in the election it was 1.1%, and so if they either get half a percentage, we are having a recount. Remember, we were even born in 2001 when there was George W. Bush and Al Gore. There was a recount, and for me, that's when I got to understand the American elections. Albeit I was quite young, but that's when I knew that they could actually recount and recount until they get that percentage.
And then also you need to also note that each candidate, at least to secure the vote, needs 270 from the electoral college to secure that vote. So it's quite an interesting kind of thing in the US. And if I told you, looking at democracy, you're looking at elections, well, there are lots of things we can learn from there. But in the same spirit, for those who are following the elections recently in Botswana, there's also a different kind of feeling from the African perspective. And I don't know what Robert Chirabo Nyonyintono has to say in regards to these elections, but all eyes are on the United States. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning. First, I've always questioned United States democracy, where then you have the colleges, then you have the public vote, you get it. By the end of the day, one thing that is very clear is there must be a winner. And I was trying to look at other advantages maybe that one candidate has over the other. Now, one would say Kamala Harris being a black woman, and also first being a woman, those two give her an upper edge. But also you find that despite the United States, one would assume that these levels we've gone bypass, but still there's still those that believe no. Now Donald Trump also has what they call a sympathy vote. You know, in politics that is very, very important, a sympathy vote. If you look at the July 13th assassination attempt, and then also there's when I think he had gone to his country home. So, and what he has gone through then has the other background of alleging they had reached him. So you find that each of them has some area where you can look at and say maybe away from what they're speaking, away from how his camp or her camp has been prepared, there is something that you can cling on and say this person could have a majority vote in that area.
Do you know what the problem I have with your assertion, Robert? It's that, and it's not you, so this is not a personal attack, but that mindset that people are thinking of Kamala Harris just as a woman of color and as a woman, forgetting her achievements as a lawyer. As a New York State attorney. She has a lot of achievements under her belt over there. But also, to answer where you said you sometimes question American democracy, you're not alone, by the way, and I also sometimes question it. But at the end of the day, there is more to this election, more to who becomes president than your race, and your color. And American people, for instance, have been putting the candidates on the spot to answer questions regarding the economy. That has been one of the major highlights of this campaign trail.
Of course, also something to do with the situation in Gaza
Yes.
is one of the other things topping up the discussion. Robert, before we head into the local news, though, yesterday the former bosses of KCCA being granted bail. Now, the scenes outside court have opened up room for discussion whether Ugandans are in the same country as those that were happy that these people who had been remanded.
First, it was legal because you want it or you don't want it. The framers of this constitution, one at police said you can get a police bond. Now, if someone reported a matter to police and someone is given police bond, one would say, but how come if they're not knowledgeable enough? Now, court, bail is a constitutional right. And as long as you fulfill the conditions for bail, then, and the judge finds it that is convinced enough that you not interfere with investigations, you have sufficient sureties, you're a person whose place is known, whatever conditions that are set, you get bail. So that's the constitutional right. It is their right. But I've already said certain things are legally right, but morally wrong. And I think that is why usually I find the conflict. That you see, if I have a daughter and I'm a Uganda man, it is not a crime and I can't take her to court for not kneeling to greet me. But morally, it would be wrong for her not to do that. Now, people jubilating when these people are out that are having cases, one would say first and foremost, they are innocent. Are you aware that currently Engineer Luyimbazi, Dorothy Chisaka, and Dr. Okello are innocent? They're just suspects until proven guilty by a competent court. Now, if my person is innocent, why won't I be happy when that person has come out? But remember, on the moral aspect, for a person who lost a relative, or we saw the cleaners, how they were jubilating, morally they would not see that right. They'll say, but really, you know, because I've not had any corruption offense against these people. It is neglect, manslaughter, and all that.
Actually, the manslaughter charge has been dropped, and now it is criminal negligence.
Yes,
to
criminal
lead to
negligence,
death.
not corruption.
Yeah.
Now, so this is what you must look at critically, because they are innocent until proven guilty by a competent court. So if my person is innocent, I'm assuming as of now, why not jubilate when they are out? Because they've not been convicted.
Also, Robert, it's important to note that as it's put in Luganda, so there will always be people who will love you even when the entire world is against you.
Well, indeed. And that, among many stories, is what we have for you from the local news. Now let's get into rights from the perspective of the locals and see what the internationals are also reporting this morning.
Let's start with that story. Now, last month, court charged and remanded former Kampala Capital City Authority Executive Director Dorothy Kisaka, former Deputy David Luyimbazi, and Director of Health Okello with 57 charges of manslaughter and causing death by rash or neglect act, which offenses they pleaded not guilty to. Yesterday, the three accused persons appeared at Kasangati Magistrates Court before Magistrate Beatrice Kahinza for bail application, with the legal team led by lawyer Mark Dusmas Kabega. The grounds included the fact that the case is still under investigations and there is no any indication when the inquiries will be done by the prosecution. The health issues were also raised by the accused, and that the accused will abide by court's orders if granted bail. Prosecution presented by Lillian Omara and Stanley Baine, who didn't raise objection to the bail application, however informed court that the accused are likely to interfere with the ongoing inquiries into the case. Magistrate Beatrice Kahinza overruled prosecution prayers and released the accused on a cash bail of 5 million each. Kahinza also, however, gave them stringent bail terms, among them not to leave the country without court permission. In the charges against the former executive director of Kisaka and the co-accused prosecution alleges that between July 2022 and August 10th, 2024, the accused operated Kitezi landfill without necessary permits and license, thus causing the death of people when the landfill collapsed. Court will resume on the 26th of November this year. District police commanders are directed to support the process of pensioners verification exercise. This is in line with police head count announcement to all eligible police pensioners. Those nearby are directed to present papers to police headquarters, while those in distant places are directed to present their documents to the DPCs in their areas of operation. In Mityana district, Buswaburongo, police cracked down on criminal gangs, arresting ringleaders, and several assortments used in criminality were recovered. Among the items recovered included pangas, cocaine, among others. Another development, the Uganda National Examination Board, UNEB, urged parents to take part in the briefing of their children in preparation for the primary leaving exams scheduled to begin today. Uganda Police has called upon the public to establish lightning arresters on buildings to mitigate the adverse impacts that come with rain. This follows an incident in Lamo, Parabek refugee camp where lightning struck and killed 14 people who were in church. Uganda Police in Lamore is investigating circumstances under which lightning struck and killed 14 people and injured 37 in Palabek refugee camp. Police caution the public and encourages construction engineers to establish lightning arresters and in building plans for infrastructure. The public is also urged to be vigilant during the rain season. The housing patterns in refugee communities and plans for the construction of settlements are a concern. Security said it is an eye-opener for designated engineers to guide on infrastructural development. And finally, from the local scene, National Unity Leadership School held the first court awarding ceremony for 103 members who completed leadership training at party headquarters in Makere, Kavure. Graduates were categorized into 3: elected leaders, professionals, and grassroots activists. President of Alliance for National Transformation, Major General Mugisha Muntu, was the chief guest who held NUP's initiative to train leaders. NUP President Robert Chagulanyi highlighted education as a powerful tool for change. He urged graduates to represent NUP in their local communities. NUP Secretary General David Lubongoya outlined the importance of the program. Councillor Fauza Sebiai, one of the graduates, spoke about the skills they gained and their plans for implementation into the communities.
We now turn our focus into what is making headlines across the borders.
Well, we go direct to the United States, where it is going to the polls today. Elon Musk's political group can keep awarding a $1 million to voters in swing states, a judge has ruled. The giveaway by Mr. Musk's America PAC is set to end on Tuesday, and the final recipient has already been determined. This according to a lawyer for the billionaire, and he said in a court hearing on Monday. In a surprising turn, the lawyer also revealed that people receiving the money have not been chosen randomly in a lottery-style contest as many believed, but were selected by the group. Philadelphia District Attorney Lawrence Krasner had sued to stop what he called an illegal lottery after Musk announced he would give the money to one voter in a swing state each day until election day. Pennsylvania Judge Angelo Foglietta did not immediately give a reason for the ruling, made a few hours after the hearing, according to the Associated Press. The $1 million recipients are not chosen by chance, the lawyer Chris Gober said during the hearing, according to the Associated Press. We know exactly who will be announced as the $1 million recipient today and tomorrow. Tomorrow being today, Tuesday, the 5th of November 2024. Now moving on, human rights activists have called on authorities in Iran to release a woman who was detained after removing her clothes at a university in what they said was a protest against the compulsory hijab laws. A video surfaced on social media on Saturday showing the woman in her underwear sitting on some steps and then walking calmly along a pavement at the Science and Research branch of Islamic Azad University in Tehran. In a second video, the woman appears to remove her underwear. Shortly afterwards, plainclothes agents are seen forcibly detaining her and pushing her into a car. Azad University said the woman suffered from a mental disorder and had been taken to a psychiatric hospital. Many Iranians on social media, however, questioned the claim and portrayed her actions as part of the woman life freedom movement that has seen many women publicly defy the laws requiring them to cover their hair and wear long, loose-fitting clothing. Now coming back to Africa, Mozambique opposition leader Venancio Mondlane, the runner-up in last month's disputed presidential election, says he has escaped an assassination attempt in South Africa where he sought refuge after challenging the results. In a video posted on Facebook, Mondlane said he was in mortal danger after assassins had gone to his home to try to kill him. Mondlane said he had to jump through the back door and run through a hair salon while carrying his bags, accompanied by his wife and daughter. He did not provide any evidence to back up his claim, and the Mozambican authorities have not yet commented. Mondlane went into hiding about 2 weeks ago after his aide and lawyer were killed as they were preparing to challenge the election results. Daniel Chapo, the candidate of the ruling party Frelimo, was officially declared the winner with over 71% of the vote as opposed to Mondlane's 20%. Mondlane didn't specify exactly where the alleged assassination attempt had taken place.
Well, now back home here with the press review, the New Vision is highlighting something to do with the Vibanja, all matters to do with land, because government gives landlords a new directive. The move is aimed at preventing wrangles with tenants. That is in the New Vision. Executive Director Dorothy Chisaka with lawyer Isaac Walukagan, prison officers, after being granted bail yesterday. And America votes 2024, how the electoral colleges determine the winner. Then tragedy, snake kills Namasagali College student in a dormitory. Deploys 13,000 scouts for PLE. Then in business, no more 3-year transitional period for UCDA. Find out more of that report in the New Vision as Muhoozi eyes stronger military ties with Qatar. At the front is the Chief of Defense Forces, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, presenting a copy of President Museveni's published autobiography entitled Sowing the Mustard Seed to an officer of the Qatar military police after their meeting. Muhoozi arrived in Qatar on Sunday, marking a significant step in strengthening military cooperation between Uganda and the West Asian country. And the Daily Monitor, fear versus hope. What are the palace's interests? The rule of law, corruption fight, the Anti-Homosexuality Act, foreign aid, and security top the list of concerns many Ugandans are discussing as the Americans go to the ballot today. Next chief executive. Now you can look at Donald Trump. His stand: under Trump, Ugandan government officials largely avoided sanctions for gross violations and abuse of human rights and the rule of law. But Trump has previously used contemptuous remarks about third world countries and explicitly stated that immigrants from such countries should be barred. He's currently 78 years old. Then his counterpart, Kamala Harris, her stand is that under Joe Biden and the Harris administration, Ugandan public officials have suffered some of the severest sanctions over the passing of the Anti-Homosexuality Act in 2023, abuse of human rights, and being adversely mentioned for involvement in gross corruption. She is currently 60 years old. Now, the key vote, the Electoral College. Under the Electoral College, Americans elect their president and vice president indirectly through their status electors. Candidates must secure 270 electoral votes. A majority of the 538 are up for grabs to win the presidency. Now, Nsenene season gets traders and consumers on cloud nine. In the other news in the Daily Monitor. Now, bail restores smiles on the faces of former KCCA bosses, and Bishop Odukami on when he stood firm against conflict. That is in the regional news. Now, in matters analysis, how youth vigilante groups spark election violence in Uganda. There is 2 pages of that report in the Daily Monitor today. Now, off to Kenya, the Daily Nation. Historic polls, America decides. What is at stake is that democracy, a presidential election unlike any other in the United States history, entered its last full day yesterday, with Donald Trump, Kamala Harris and their campaigns scrambling to get supporters to the polls in a contest each portrays as an existential moment for America. If Trump, currently 78, wins, he would be the oldest person in the U.S. history to be elected president, while Harris, 60, has a chance to become the first woman to hold the world's most powerful job. So there is a lot of history to be written. Now, 6 billion Kenyan shillings for COVID as counties rule out jobs. Now, man is last called to wife daughter hours before killings, that is in crime. Now, the health ministry will pay 6.3 billion Kenyan shillings gratuity to over 8,000 medics who had a frontline role in the fight against COVID-19, as the ministry calls for rigorous enforcement of exam rules. Now, stick to your lane, Ruto tells the judges. Now, briefly, before we head into the break, there is a statement coming in from the Uganda Airlines, a statement of correction which reads clarification of legal action on Uganda Airlines by a fuel supplier. Now, the Uganda Airlines is seeking to clarify the information that has been published by the Monitor publication online outlets about the legal action against Uganda Airlines due to non-payment of its obligation to a fuel supplier. This is to clarify as follows. The Uganda Airlines has contracted MIX Jet to supply fuel from July 2019 to July 2024. The airline has also made payments to MixJet valued at $140 million US. The amount due to MixJet is approximately $8 million and not $10 million as claimed. Now, also the delay in payment is derived from Uganda Airlines' insistence on paying based on fuel uplifts and tech logs, not just the supplier's invoices. Over the time, the airline has received some inflated fuel invoices, high market prices, as well as erroneously billed and over-invoiced and inconsistent threats to withdraw services without due warning to the detriment of the operations. While the airlines appreciates the credit facilities offered by the supplier, it finds it unacceptable that the supplier would drag it to the mainstream media to protest standard financial management practices. The airline will reconcile every invoice and, after satisfying itself, pay the supplier within a reasonable time. The airline assures the public, especially its guests, that its operations will continue unabated. Fly Uganda Airlines, that is from the management of Uganda Airlines. Well, that does it for our news and, of course, the press review. When we return, we do have our news roll, but first, our inspirational song of the day. Good morning.
Live from UPC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Are doing, but of course, besides that, more of The news also coming in within the local perspective of things. And then from the side of the international relations, the Prime Minister, who is representing the country in Abu Dhabi, was also there trying to call upon the investors in the UAE to continue investing in Uganda, and also thanking them for being a host to over 500,000 Ugandans who work within the United Arab Emirates. So that is something that you can look back at and say, yes, indeed, the month of November is starting on a very good note, and so is Good Morning Uganda. But also, please do note that today on the 1st of November, we shall be taking you live at the new All Saints Cathedral, which is going to be officially opened by President Yoweri Museveni, for the news that we do have so far. And of course, that particular event, or that live event, will be coming to you here on your national broadcaster, meaning for everybody who has been asking the questions of when will the All Saints Cathedral be completed. Well, it is now up and running, and of course the president will be officially opening it or commissioning it, and it's something that you, our dear viewer, should definitely be looking out for this particular Friday. But that said, I would also like to hear from you as well in regards to how far you've reached when it comes to the New Year resolutions that you set at the start of 2024. That was 1st January, or many of us did set these resolutions on the 31st as we were entering the year through prayer. Because now we are into the 11th month, and if we are into the 11th month, you can only sit back and say, now, at least good health, tick. The money, not so much. When you look at the friends that you've been able to keep this year, have you has your business grown? Have you been able to get some promotions at work? Have you left the workplace that you started with? If I told you were unemployed at the start of the year, have you finally got the job? These are the resolutions that many people come out with. There are others who set resolutions of maybe buying property, others building houses. These are all things that you have to look back at and start evaluating to see if at all you did not meet any of the targets that you set at the start of the year. Maybe it is high time you got back and you started to be thankful about the life that you still have, because as much as you have not achieved many when it comes to the material earnings, you've got to be thankful about the life that you are leading, because that alone is more important. And of course, if at all you've not achieved, again, it is not time for you to lose the hope. You can sit back and strategize again or re-energize to see that by the start of 2025, many of the things that you've been working on in this particular year of 2024 can fully finalize next year of 2025. And I've been following various conversations on social media where many people have been asking questions, what happened in 2025? It's more like a projection sort of post where you just talk about what you expect to achieve in 2025, and that kind of spirit is what I am expecting you, my dear viewer, to be carrying on with you in this new month of November. Of course, the energy is right for us here every Friday, because with the Good Morning Uganda Friday
of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
I'll call you every day, yeah, yo, baby, don't know.
You can now get all the Chibuzi out with MTN voice bundles. Call all networks. Kubei Dondoro. Buy a 25-minute voice bundle for only 1,000, or buy any daily voice bundle of your choice. Dial *100*21# and select daily, or use the My MTN app. When we talk together, we are unstoppable.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Maskari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archive stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, as many schools in the country are preparing for the UACE finals, that is on the secondary schools calendar, it is not good news coming in from Boshenyi district, because Nyakabanga Senior Secondary School saw its dormitory in Chabukubi sub-county on Monday gutted by the fire. And of course, the police are still investigating circumstances under which this dormitory got gutted by the fire, and of course quite a number of personal belongings such as mattresses, blankets, scholastic materials and suitcases of about 40 students and residents of the burnt dormitory were burnt to ashes following that incident of fire in the school. Of course, this is opening room for discussion in regards to the fire incidents that we've been having over the years here in the country, and well, we've been having these conversations on and also opening room for the call to action, that where are our response, where are our emergency responses in regards to such circumstances, because it does seem like every year we continue to report such cases of fire incidents. It's going to be a room for conversation this morning here on Good Morning Uganda's Newsreel. I have Olive Monica Najuma and Chirabo Robert Nyonyintono, who's in Studio B, to open up this conversation of school fires in the country. So we want to address the matter as it is, and also looking into the emergency responses as our country. And of course, in the same time, as we will be winding up with the discussion this morning, we shall be picking some phone calls, as well as getting through some of those messages from you, our dear viewer, in regards to the topic that we are having this morning. So you can share with us what you think should be done to prevent these continuous school fires in Ugandan schools. That said, let's dive into the conversation. I'll start off with Olive, who is with me here in Studio A, to understand the situation, but pretty much look into some of those causes that lead to some of the school fires that continue to rock our education sector year in, year out. Olive, this is not the first time we're hearing such incidents.
Not at all.
But again, you do realize that some of the causes of these school fires kind of look familiar or similar in a way.
Yeah, Joram, that's right. And unfortunately for this incident, police is still investigating to ascertain the cause of the fire. But according to the head teacher of the school, they say the fire broke out at around 10 a.m. and that electricity was actually off in the area. So we cannot blame this on maybe short circuit or something of that nature, or something to do with power. So it remains to be understood what caused this fire. But when you look at other fires, police investigations have always shown that there is an element of arson from competitors, and where we have lost lives. And for instance, last year we had so many fires in the country in different areas. One stands out in a school in Masaka, where most of the pupils, because these were 6 to 7 year olds, most of them actually lost their lives, the ones that were in the dormitory that caught fire. And among the elements that led to the death of these children was one, government put an initiative forward and said schools should do away with burglar proof in windows. But you'll find that in this school, there were burglar proofs in the windows. So there was no escape route. And also the triple deckers. Government said schools should do away with triple deckers. I can tell you, Joram, there are many schools where you're going to go today and you're going to find triple deckers. You're going to find the dormitories extremely crowded, that in case of a fire, a stampede alone is going to kill the students before the fire and suffocation gets to them. So there is that. But for me, there is another aspect, Joram. Maybe a lot of property could be saved. For instance, in this school, all students were in their classes because it was 10 a.m. All of them had gone to class for lessons. But then property for the students and the school caught fire. And you know why? Because when they reached out to the nearest police station, guess what? They did not have fire trucks. They said the ones they have been packed for so many years, they're not working. When they reached out to Mbarara, to their colleagues in Mbarara, it was the same situation. So you're looking at Western Uganda having a situation to do with fire and no fire trucks to come in and save the day. So in as much as schools are supposed to have fire extinguishers themselves, they still need the fire trucks to be ready in case the fire goes out of hand, and there wasn't any.
And well, of course, just last month, there was also a girls' dormitory at Bilal Islamic Institute, that is in Wakiso district, that was gutted by fire. And when you look at these cases, it seems dormitories are so much at risk. And then one may wonder, where are they situated? Are they far away from the school premises? Are they close to the kitchen? Or are they close to, let's say, the electricity poles of the school? Many questions are there. But Robert, let me bring you into this conversation. Olive shares with us most of the causes or the common causes of these fires. But again, one may wonder, what are the consequences like after these cases happen?
Well, like Olive said, I was looking through a report here that is by the National Building Review Board. Investigations found that 52% of fires are caused by human action, such as arson. Now, it's very clear that these are then deliberate. Though one would say sometimes maybe a candle that may not be deliberate, but majority of these fires are caused by arson. Now, you asked for the impact. We must all know that many Ugandans do not insure their property or their businesses, isn't it? So
that's right.
Most of the times when these damages occur, you can lose that school forever, or some students may never return to that school or even end their education because they have no fallback position. Now, dormitory is destroyed, property is destroyed, we're in the final term looking at our education calendar. It automatically means disruption of studies of the students, because a certain student may not be able to get that simple suitcase, the mattress, you know, the books, because you know our dormitory life, almost everything of yours is there. Now, it can lead also to school dropout, because, or even missing critical exams. We are having the P7s did whatever they are doing, and I think they are starting, briefing was yesterday, today it's mathematics, and then SSC, then tomorrow they have the science and English. But we've just had the senior 4s. Now your senior 6 are also preparing. Now look at the candidate classes, what these fires could mean to many of them. and the fact that many of these schools are never ensured that maybe in case of this uncertainty, they'll be able to return to the same state or similarly where they were. But we've also seen loss of lives, and it's the greatest impact of these fires. Loss of pupils and students' lives. Who forget the Budo fire?
No
you know,
one.
who forget the many fires that have consumed, that have taken lives of our dear ones, the students, the pupils that we send to learn, and only a parent to be told the fires gutted a school, and when you look at the children so far, yours seems to be missing. It's a very sad moment. So life, property are destroyed, but also in some areas I've seen schools that never recover from this. Yes.
And well, of course, I also need to understand though, why are we failing at preventing these fire outbreaks? It does seem like every year we're having cases, and it's like it's the same kind of book we are reading from.
Actually,
fire guts the dormitory, or guts the classroom,
2023,
nothing happens.
We have a 16% increase since 2023.
And Robert, when you look at this 16% increase, you're going to find that some, in as much as we want to hold, let's say, authorities accountable in terms of their role to supervise and ensure that some of the initiatives they have put in place are still working, some of the problems that are leading to these fires or lead to the loss of lives in case of a fire are so deeply engraved that even government may find it hard to find them. Let's talk about the earthing and the wiring. In most of these schools, you're going to find that this was poorly done. And this is normally done at the point of construction, right? And I don't think government has enough resources to actually go and check out every single school and ensure that they do the right job. Now, this is not me cutting government some slack, but at the same time, it's important for us to understand where some of these problems come from. Also, after COVID-19, there are schools that turned buildings that were not supposed to be dormitories in the first place into dormitories. And I believe that this is also a contributor to some of the problems, because I'll give you an example. If you're constructing a house and you set out for a certain room to be a kitchen, there are things you're going to do to ensure that they are viable for a kitchen. Now, if you're building a dormitory, the way you build a classroom and a dormitory, I believe, are two different ways. I stand to be corrected here, but that's my understanding. So when you look at issues like the poor wiring, faulty wiring, inadequate safety measures, the poor infrastructure in these schools, and lack of fire safety awareness, you go to places and you ask people, where is your fire assembly point? They don't know it. Smoke detectors in dormitories, they are not there. So our children even taught about fires. In this district, this is the second fire in less than a month. So one would think that maybe if there was maybe fire awareness lessons taken in the school and surrounding areas, maybe something could have been saved. So there is a lot of, what should I call them? There is a lot of moving parts here that need to be put together.
And of course, at times, even the delay of the response teams to come through, the equipment that is supposed to be of help is also not enough in most of the areas.
No, look at it this way, Jerome. In the people in this district, the police in this district, they contacted the regional police station headquarters, and they said the machines we have are damaged. They've been parked for years. They reached out to Mbarara district and Rukunjiri, the same situation. This is pretty much the whole of Western Uganda. So if the entire region doesn't have fire response teams that are ready, what is this? Because the fires are going to happen, and they do not warn.
And Robert, in such circumstances, what needs to be done? Let's look into some of the solutions available, because you're looking at, the shortcomings. You're also looking at the fire outbreaks that continue to rock most of the schools.
And this is not only within the city centers, because it is happening countrywide. You're hearing a situation that will come in from up country. You hear something coming in from a school that is in the urban centers. So we need to understand
and also
what
markets
solutions.
And buildings.
Markets and buildings. So
personally, I want to avoid surgical operation and look at being proactive, because certain things are not sustainable. It is very important that government has these firefighting trucks. And I recommend it, and that is something that government should take very, very serious to ensure that at least regions, areas. But you know, when you study fire, at least I was able to be in some trainings, media trainings, when we had so much school fires. But when they tell you how swift fire moves, and in a dormitory that has mattresses, that, you know, everything in a dormitory is acting as a catalyst to the fire.
It's highly flammable.
Because they are highly flammable.
Yeah.
Now, the situation may not be you having fire trucks, given our road network. You know, when a mattress catches fire, and if it has been arson, I don't know where a fire truck can get to a scene within 10 minutes. That may not be very easy. So, what is best, I want to take it back to government, is how do we be proactive? Government came up with fire prevention guidelines for schools. But what is funny is that these have not been implemented to the latter. For example, they tell you electricity was off, yeah?
Yeah.
In that area. So we could rule out issues of electricity. Now, investigations are not yet done, and I'm not preempting investigations. But we've had fires where there is evidence it is arson. They talked about perimeter walls, isn't it? For schools, or a strong fence. They talked about a guard at watch, not this person who is working in the kitchen during daytime, Hafasha is mingling, posho, doing everything. Then at night you get him a coat, a bow and arrow, plus small waraji to move around the school with a stick. But someone who is aware of what they are supposed to do. Even if you're in the village, you may not have the guns, but at least askaris to be on guard. They talked about having student-teacher teams, because some arson is a result of strikes, not so? But when you have these fire committees in schools, they talked about issues like burglar proofs that you've just talked about, Olive, that they shouldn't be there, that even if the fire brigade delays, but there are exits. I go to a number of places and you see emergency door. But the emergency door is locked completely. But it has emergency door. And I ask myself, now if there's a fire outbreak, how do we use this emergency door that is 24/7 under lock?
Also, Robert, those emergency doors, if you find them, let's say, on arcades, there will be, where they are locked, but also they will have these steep stairs. I don't know if you gentlemen have noticed.
Yes, so
whereby in case of people
you're
running,
either going to fall down.
Exactly.
Yes,
or
they
you're not
talked
going to
about
survive.
schools having fire extinguishers. You know, we have the school inspection. Is it a directorate? I think there is so much. The fact that you license these schools, how often do these inspectors go there, and what do they look out for? In the days we are told a school inspector would land at school when even the headmaster is not aware. Today they announce the school inspector is coming. So you prepare for a visitor and put even what you don't have. So I think the Ministry of Education is very, very important that the Inspectorate Directorate of Schools is empowered with human resource and well facilitated, so that we ensure the fire fighting prevention guidelines are in place. We can only be proactive than assuming that let's have whatever is needed, that in case of a fire outbreak, because fire travels very fast and the dormitories have what is highly inflammable. Then also finally, when you assess these fires, most of them are happening in private schools. And
because not so many government schools have boarding sections.
yes, and when you, all traditional, and when you analyze properly, they come from conflicts. Government should also scrutinize how a school managements, how do these private schools, they should interest themselves in their management. A person hires someone today A person teaches for some months, they perform well, then chases and hires another.
No, it's free will, it's the private sector, Robert.
Yeah? So they start a school, then one director breaks the... By the end of the day, we are having lives lost in this mess. So how does it interest itself that for you to start a school, are we sure you have the board of directors? Because there is a criteria. Are we sure you have the parents, is it PTTA? Or there's a committee of parents, the parent management committee. All of this should be in place. But for me, for being proactive, yes, it's good we need the firefighting trucks, but fire travels very, very fast. And if we know very well what it takes to stop a fire, I think it is something that the ministry can just embark on ensuring that we prevent the fires from happening, rather than concentrating on when they happen, what do we do?
And to you, our dear viewer, you can be part of this conversation this morning by calling us or WhatsApping us on 0709 602 592, 0709 602 592. That is the number that you're seeing on the screen. You can be part of this conversation and sharing with us what you think is the best way to prevent this particular school fire outbreaks that we're having, because it's a looming threat. And it seems we're supposed to take serious action of the same. And like Robert has been sharing about some of those particular things or solutions that we really need to do, I think you, our dear viewer, can as well be part of it and share with us the same. Let me head to Olive. Olive, what do you think should be done? What are some of those preventive measures that we need to put as a country?
We need public awareness or education regarding fire safety. You find that not only in schools, many people don't know much about fires. And when these fires are happening elsewhere, we all believe we are immune. But it's important for us to have this kind of education and never tire. In a school, if it has happened in some schools in rural areas, schools in urban centers should not think that they are immune. It can happen anytime. It can be an accident. There could be an arson element. A lot can happen. And then let school owners also remember that the clients they have are the pupils, are the students. So how do you safeguard these children that have been placed under your care? If the government has found that burglar proofs are a danger to the lives of the children in case of a fire, why are you insisting on having them? Now, I know that schools may have resource constraints and may not be able to build bigger dormitories, but I think, Jeremy, as much as it is business, we need to stop with the greed. Because if your dormitories can, let's say, have 600 pupils, why are you admitting 1,500? Yes. Seriously. But also government, where are you? As in as much as you can say that you don't have enough resources to buy enough fire trucks, then there is the poor road network and whatnot. When it comes to supervision, are you really doing your job? Try to supervise as much as you can. But also there is the other aspect. For me, it is investing in fire prevention infrastructure, especially in under-resourced areas. So maybe instead of just depending on the government to, provide firefighting infrastructure, we may need other private individuals to invest in the same, and probably this could help.
And we do have a phone call coming in. We do have a caller. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
How are you? What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
What's your name, Tata? What's your name, Mkama wange?
Well, how are you?
My name is Mama Janet Museveni from Mundeje.
Yes. What is your comment on the conversation we are having? Yenyabo.
I'm fine, thank you for working.
Kakati otesa chiku kuchetugezaako okunyumyamu wano kumacha.
Mbadde nteesa bwe nti ku masomero mukama wange
Yenyabo.
sebo mukama wange amasomero tebaliiyo. Bwe bagenda kusomero sebo nteesa ku masomero.
Hey, thank you very much for that comment from Ndeje. Now, let me get into some. We've unfortunately lost that caller. Just two of these comments coming in from WhatsApp. This one says, good morning, gentlemen and lady. Cases of fire outbreaks increase as remedies still go down. Time will reach when we run out of solutions for this case. This is very worrying. I think government needs to make proper investigations before giving out licenses to any person starting out schools. This is Cricketer Gagamel from Makinje Luafu. Then this one is, hello. Hello, good morning. Oh, we've lost that one. Now this one says, good morning, Uganda. For sure, many mushrooming. Oh, wow. It says, good morning, Uganda. Schools are packed and administrators do not check. Some use cheap wiring teams and it's just waiting for a spark to light. And also school conflicts between teachers, students and administration. PTAs are there in private settings, but they don't have a say on decision making. The supervisors go there and get envelopes and don't supervise. Corruption in action, the license of inadequate schools. This one did leave a comment. We shall take one more caller and then end up with our conversation. Hello.
Can you be seated to you?
Yes, good morning. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm from Entebbe. My concern, I've been watching the show about fire outbreaks in school. So, what I'm commenting about is, what I want to say, like, should be put up to stop fire outbreaks is that maybe schools should also connect more with their students, because sometimes you find these students who are expelled from school are the ones who come back and cause fire outbreaks. For example, in a school in Navy district called Sunrise, a student was expelled from school. And these same students came back and burnt the school. So you can imagine, sometimes it's the students. Then it's burglar proof. Students sometimes keep using those very windows to escape in the dormitory and go steal other friends' stuff. So I don't think, maybe that's why schools are being reluctant on removing the burglar proofs. Yes. So that's all I can say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your comment this morning and being part of the discussion. Now, of course, this conversation is coming at the backdrop of the fact that yesterday, Monday, 4th November, the exams of the PLE pupils started with the briefing, and the first exam will be written tomorrow on Wednesday. So we shall be giving you updates of what will be coming in from that side and the preparations from schools and the statistics in regards to those that will be writing their final primary leaving examinations. Our conversation has been pretty much about school fire outbreaks in the country. Olive Monica Najuma, Robert Chirabonyonyi Ntono, and of course you, our dear viewer, who has been part of this discussion. And for those that we missed out on the phone calls with the Good Morning Uganda agenda, you will as well be part of the discussion that we'll be having in that hour of the show, and also looking into tomorrow's discussion. Good morning and stick around to GMU.
Live from UPC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
I'll call you every day, yeah, yo, May Dondolo.
You can Now get all the Chibuzi out with MTN voice bundles. Call all networks. Kubei Dondoro. Buy a 25-minute voice bundle for only 1,000 or buy any daily voice bundle of your choice. Dial *100 *21 hash and select daily or use the My MTN app. When we talk together, we are unstoppable.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Juko. Yo. Wachiko. Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Haven't you heard of the parish development model PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, it is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a poultry project, and now things are moving.
Juko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. What you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
Live from UPC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, good to have you again. It's time for Good Morning Uganda Business, and we'll start off with the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development that has raised awareness among local governments to ensure businesses do comply with the National Action Plan on Human Rights and the Business Framework. Now, the Minister for Gender, Honourable Betty Amongi, while addressing the 6th Annual Businesses and Human Rights Symposium, emphasized provision workers with a safe and supportive working environment. Now, the businesses in Uganda have cases of violating human rights in Uganda, so the 6th Annual Business and Human Rights Symposium builds responsible business. And the Minister for Gender and Social Development revealed that the ministry has efforts that will foster collaboration and drive positive change in business and the human rights landscape. This initiative is distinguishing child work and child labor. And in the same regard, the Chairperson, Human Rights Commission, Maria Mwangadia, stressed safeguarding children's rights in businesses where they are involved. Now, this year's theme was emerging voluntary and mandatory frameworks, strengthening responsible business conduct, highlighting the ministry's commitment to protect workers' rights and promote a conducive working environment. And away from that, we now turn our focus on the Rotary Club of Chambogo that has embarked on a charity drive. The Rotary Club of Chambogo, in conjunction with the Rotary Club of Chambogo University, participated in a remarkable charity project which aimed to empower young minds at Chambogo Primary School through the donation of scholastic materials and teaching essential skills on menstrual hygiene by providing essential education resources to the underprivileged students and educating children, especially girls, on menstrual hygiene, and also providing reusable sanitary towels. Now, this was done through collaborating with SAI officers with SAI officers for scholastic materials, and then the Uganda Girl Guides Association for the menstrual hygiene. Now, the school and the teachers distributed scholastic materials, books, pencils, pens, mathematical sets, and conducted a workshop on menstrual hygiene and reusable sanitary pads. The club had 200 students who benefited from scholastic materials, and 70 girls and boys learned menstrual hygiene and reusable sanitary towel making. Now, the president, Karen Claire Nasanga, revealed that the Rotary Club of Chambogo demonstrates that small actions can spark significant change by providing essential resources and teaching the vital skills as they embarked on empowering young minds to thrive. She further advised the general public to continue to uplift and educate, ensuring a brighter future for all. We do have more of the highlights from the set.
My name is Kamanyire Navwire Alexandria. I'm the head teacher at Chambogo Primary School. Today we have hosted a group of young people who have decided to support their communities.
And today we are here at Chambogo Primary School, where we are partnering with our sister club, Chambogo University, the Rotary Club of Chambogo University, and we are having a donation of scholastic materials. We gave out books, pencils, pens, sets, and to different students of all classes, and we also have a success card for our P7 candidates. We also gave them some items to enable them to get ready.
This project personally means a lot to me because I am one who likes to give back to the community, and the reception that we've been given here by the headmistress, by all the members involved, the dean, it really means a lot to us that we have been welcomed first of all, and we've been allowed to give back to this project.
We are here at Chambogo Primary School planting the trees. As you're planting trees, we are leaving a mark.
We are here to thank the Rotary Club Chambogo for providing us with seedlings. We have penne here that we are going to enjoy in the future.
Today was my first time to participate in charity. I love the way they were happy when we were giving them scholastic materials. I love the fact that they were so appreciated.
It has been so impactful, and I'm so glad to be part of this project.
So we taught the students how to make sanitary towels, and we gave them the chance to take the sanitary towels that they made so that they can go back home and teach their other sisters, teach other people how to make those sanitary towels. I toast to Rotary International.
Right. And that does it for business. Let's now have a look at the forex market to see how the Ugandan shilling has been faring against the other currencies on the exchange. $655.45 shillings was selling at 3,665.45 shillings. By midday, the US dollar was buying at 3,655.27 while selling at 3,665.27. The US dollar was then buying at 3,655.27 while selling at 3,665.27, still as it was during midday. The Great Britain pound was buying at 4,749.65 while selling at 4,762.65. The euro was buying at 3,983.14 while selling at 3,994.04. The Kenyan shilling was buying at 28.33 while selling at 28.41. The Tanzanian shilling was buying at 1.35 while selling at 1.36. The South African rand was buying at 208.58 while selling at 209.15. And well, that does it for business. Now, as we're heading into the election updates from the United States. Today, the 5th of November 2024, the United States will decide who will be its next president and, of course, its new administration. But we are now going to be understanding how the Electoral College vote does work, or how the Electoral College works, because the Public Affairs Council in charge of public diplomacy, that is with the U.S. Embassy to Uganda, Ellen Massey, in a sit-down interview with UBC, revealed that the Electoral College is the body that elects the President of the United States. Vote for, because rather than voting directly from for the President, the populations vote for an elector who can then cast their ballot in their political favor. And Massey noted that each state has the same number of electors as representatives and senators in Congress, with some often argue that this favors states with smaller populations, as the first two electors throw off the population ratio. This and more is from our updates from the United States elections.
Special interactive news segment with me, she's none other than the public relations officer in charge of public affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Kampala. Ellen Massey, nice for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, 1 day to go to the U.S. elections. Americans will be deciding who is their next president. We would like to know from you what is at stake for Africa in these U.S. presidential elections.
Yeah, you know, I think Americans, by and large, are obviously focused on our own domestic questions and challenges and our own future and prosperity. But I know that Africans and people across the world are very interested in U.S. elections, because the United States plays an important role in the world and on the world stage. So we haven't heard much directly from the two candidates for our presidential election specific to Africa. I think what you have seen in the years past in this current administration was a big focus on Africa, starting with the Africa Leaders Summit, and we've had a number of high-level officials, including Vice President Kamala Harris, come to the continent, and a number of others. And I think that there has been a real groundswell of interest and focus and connections, not just with the U.S. government, but with businesses and with universities who've come to countries and developed relationships, and I can imagine that those are going to continue and grow deeper because the seeds of those relationships were born in the last few years, or even many years longer.
Well, we know for a fact that Africa is not featured so much in foreign policy discussions in the build-up to the U.S. presidential elections. Do you think that the outcomes of these elections will have a significant impact on African countries and beyond?
I think you've seen, let's just say here in Uganda, for the past 60 years, we've developed and continued partnerships, 6 decades of engagement in the health sector to grow economically and to improve the prosperity of Ugandans, to improve education, and to develop relationships through our exchange programs, for example, and invested in people who've come back to Uganda, and you can see the impact of a lot of that long-term, decades-long relationship. And I think you will continue to see that kind of impact over the next year, no matter who wins the election tomorrow.
What are likely to be the policies for the next U.S. administration in regard to immigration, emissions, trade wars, peacemaking in the Horn of Africa and the Great Lakes region? Will you weigh in on that?
Well, you're asking me to look into a crystal ball, I think. And I can't look into the crystal ball and see anything, because tomorrow's elections, which will determine who is going to be not just the President of the United States, but also the senators and the Congress people who are representing the American people, will all impact the foreign policy, both the domestic and the foreign policies that will be enacted over the next 4 years. So it is difficult for me, sitting in my position as a diplomat, to anticipate what those foreign policy changes or continuations might be. It just is something we'll have to wait and see, as we all are, I think, waiting with bated breath to see what will happen after the elections. But I can tell you that we will continue to have ambassadors and diplomats working here in Uganda and across the world, engaging with our foreign counterparts and discussing the most important issues that are affecting all of us. Those things are not going to change. We will continue to have those relationships. We'll continue to work on the hard challenges that we're all facing around the world. And so from that perspective, I don't think you'll see a change. I think you will continue to see us working together to address the challenges of our day.
Well, let me take you on Africa has the fastest growing populations and the fastest growing economy. Is this something that worries you or that you take seriously, given the fact that many of the areas of interest, like in the mineral interests, technology, the American people or the U.S. governments have not picked much interest, leaving a vacuum for countries like China and Russia to watch by, the Persian countries. Is this an issue of concern to the Americans?
So you talked about the vast majority of young people across Africa. To me, and I think to our government, it's exciting, right? You have a lot of young people who are full of passion, who see the world and opportunity ahead of them. And so for many of us, and certainly for me and my capacity as the head of public diplomacy of the U.S. Embassy, but really all of our agencies are looking to help support this young population in its endeavors and in the opportunities that could present themselves. So we're looking to support them in education. I mean, every single day I see young people with innovative ideas who have more information at their fingertips than any other young people have had throughout history, and who can see and envision a future for themselves. And so part of what I think we do, not just as the US government, but we are seeing more and more a lot of US universities who are engaging on the continent, engaging with young people, sometimes offering opportunities to study in the United States or providing joint opportunities for research. There are businesses, there are people who are seeing this energy and these opportunities and engaging. And the United States and the government system that we have really is supportive of not just a US government engagement and approach, but really supporting and allowing for our private sector, for our academic institutions to engage and to continue to build those relationships. And we try to foster that, and we do that every single day.
Well, let's talk about U.S. stand on security issues on the African continent. We are seeing more than 20 countries on the African continent. The security situation has worsened. And compared to almost a decade ago. And this, in one way or the other, has rolled back democracy and issues to do with good governance. A case in point, in the Sahel region, in the Great Lakes region, does this worry the United States, more especially in the Sahel region? We have just got to know, around early this year, you lost some Marine forces in the Sahel region. Does this worry you? Does this threaten the U.S. national security?
So yes, I mean, of course, we're worried about instability across, certainly in the Sahel and across the continent. And we remain engaged to try to support countries trying to maintain their democracies, maintain security. As I'm sure you know, we have been engaged supporting the regional security efforts in Somalia. We have a special envoy here in Uganda this week who's working on Sudan and the challenges that we've been facing, and the region has faced, and certainly Sudan itself. So we are very much engaged and concerned about insecurity across the continent. You know, you mentioned this continent of young people. Young people want to see a peaceful world in which they can gain an education, maintain their health, you know, thrive, to find jobs and to contribute to society. They want to stay in their countries and to give back, and they have to have a secure environment to do that. So yes, the United States is engaged on all of these issues, and we will continue to be in support of you know, security and democracy across the continent.
The security situation in the Horn of Africa is a concern for many development partners, and some are have threatened to pull out funding for the African Union troops that are on the ground, including the European Union. The UN has threatened. We are seeing deadlines are coming in. So the African Union countries have started pulling out their forces. Do you think that leaving the Horn of Africa the way it is, if African Union forces pull out, are you not worried of that Horn of the Africa country sliding back into chaos?
Look, we came here today to talk about elections, and so obviously, yeah, I mean, when you have insecurity, it's a lot harder to have a free and fair electoral process and a democratically led government, no matter where that is. So yes, that is an absolute concern, and is why we continue to be engaged, why we look to the various actors on the continent. Africans themselves, I know we hear often Africans are looking to solve their own challenges. Africans will come up with African solutions to African challenges, and we are here to support Africans in trying to lead to a more secure and democratic continent, and that is something that I believe we will continue to.
My last shot on this special interactive news segment is, what's your take on public perception that if the Republican nominee, Donald Trump, wins the elections, he's likely to prioritize military aggression as a solution over human rights assistance to Africa, foreign aid assistance to Africa.
That he's likely to
prioritize military aggression as a solution over foreign aid assistance to Africa.
I haven't been privy to any of those conversations, but I think that it is important for Africans to hear what any president who is elected, one of the two who is elected tomorrow, and to really listen to what they have to say and to engage in conversations here in Uganda and with people like me, diplomats who continue to engage and hear and feed back the information about our relationship and what Africans are seeing on the ground and what you would like to see for yourselves and how you'd like to engage with the United States. I can't speak to the perceptions of Africans and what they think Donald Trump may or may not do should he be elected, but it's certainly something we should continue to engage on in robust conversation once our president is elected.
And something that we have left out of this conversation that you would like to talk about?
Well, I think that what's really important to recognize is tomorrow is an important day for American citizens, and it is important for democracies around the world that we engage in this very important civic duty to determine our next leaders and to have a peaceful transition of power that is inherent in a democracy, that free and fair elections in the United States and around the world are what we really need in order to solve the challenges that many of us are facing around the world. And so I hope that every citizen in a democracy sees that duty as the important duty that it is, and that it is not just that one duty, but it is up to all of us to understand and talk about and think about what we want to see in our own futures, and to demonstrate that that power that we have is one that we will never give up. We will continue to engage in our civic duty to be part of our democracies as good citizens. So I hope that that will happen in America tomorrow, and as we have so many elections around the world this year, that all citizens of democracies will continue to be to do that important civic duty.
Thank you on this special interactive news segment where we discuss issues that affect the people.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Live from UPC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Maskari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archive stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, every story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Live from UPC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, will it be former President Donald Trump or the current Vice President Kamala Harris for the next 4 years in the United States administration at the White House? We will be waiting to see that and more. 5th November is today, and the United States is already hitting those polls. Of course, early vote casting kicked off last week, and many people have also been able to cast their votes. But not only that, the presidential aspirants have also been moving to various states to ensure that they get the left. They actually pick up those other votes or other voters who are undecided in the same spirit. But of course, when we talk about the United States elections 2024, a lot of attention heads to the United States, especially from the African countries and other developing countries. Many of them are having their eyes open and their ears on ground to see and to also understand how the elections do pan out. But this is a conversation we're going to be having this very morning, looking into the USA elections 2024 and also understanding the implications for Africa's trade, development, and matters to do with diplomacy and international relations. My guest this morning is Ambassador Henry Mayiga, who does join us. This morning. Good morning, Ambassador. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning to you, sir. And good morning to our viewers and listeners.
Well, I don't know how many elections of the United States you've had the privilege to follow, but all I can say, this is going to be one of the historical ones as well in our time. And I don't know how far you've seen the elections of this particular year, 2024, and what your opinion is.
Of course, I can understand why the entire world, it's not only Uganda, whether it's our country or the entire world, everybody is following what's happening in the US. And the elections definitely have an impact on the entire globe. And so the excitement is not misplaced, because American influence is great on the globe. Okay. Everywhere you go, that influence is felt. So when Ugandans are gripped with the almost to fever point, with the prospects of and you know what's going to happen, especially after the elections today, I can understand why, because global influence, American influence on the globe, is so fascinating in many respects. That projection of power, militarily, economically, and socially, speaks volumes about how the Americans have learned how to project their power throughout the world. And so it doesn't come as a surprise that everybody is gripped with a, fever point, the prospects of what's going to come out in the elections. So it's not a misplaced subject in my view.
Okay, yeah. Indeed, it's not a misplaced subject there, because all the attention is now focusing on the West. And many other big economies are also having their eyes on ground to see how things do pan out at the end of it all. Will it be the Kamala Harris administration or the Donald Trump administration once again in the White House, that is in the US? But now let's bring it back to the African continent, Ambassador. Looking at it from the side of the relations, the international relations that the US has over the years established with African countries, you look at the fundings, and of course, however much the restrictions have also been there. But what is at stake here?
Of course, for me, in my view, there is an overplay of the stakes that we're going to, we face as a continent. Because globally there are so many other players that are really taking toll on the African continent in terms of the military, as I've said before, in terms of economics, in terms of investments, in terms of so many other things. But of course the Americans were there before the others in a big way. And therefore Africa cannot escape the thinking and the attention they have to pay to whatever happens in the US. Now, of course, the background is extremely important to be given so that we can understand where we're coming from. You are having two political belligerents. You have the Republicans on the one side and you have the Democrats on the other. Basically, the Republicans being represented by Donald Trump and the Democrats being represented by Kamala Harris. In the sense of the US, the Democrats are referred to as sometimes left-leaning, so liberal, whereas the Republicans are referred to as conservatives, and they want to conserve as much as possible for what they have in their country, and their policy variations definitely. And therefore, whichever way the election results goes, it will definitely have a bearing on the African politics, on the African trade, on the African prospects for investment, for instance, which presumably is supposed to come from the US, and so on and so forth. But I wanted to point out one thing, that if you look at the volumes, for instance, let's take out trade, before we go delve into the politics, and how the Americans would like to project their political power throughout the world, and most especially in Africa. When you look at trade, the volume of trade between Africa and the US is $44 billion US. It's a huge sum of money, of course, there's no doubt about it. That is the volume of trade between but of course it is tilted in favor of the US, because much of the things that we receive from the US fetch more money for the US itself, rather than the other way around. So that is the volume of trade. But if you superimpose that, for instance, with China, whose volume of trade with Africa is in the region of $280 billion US. So you will see that things are changing on the globe. that reasoning has to be brought out so that we can understand that yes, the Americans for a very long time have been projecting power through trade, and that is the volume of trade. So when you compare the two, there's more trade between between Africa and China than the level of trade that we have between Africa and the US. Now, when it comes to the politics between the US and Africa, and in particular with Uganda, of course, we'll get there, of course, as the discussions go on. When you look at the politics, of course, the Americans would want as much as possible to have a replica of their politics. The kind of politics, the political system that they have in their country being replicated in Africa. So you're talking about human rights, of course, they will tell you that you have to, for instance, accept homosexuality in your countries. They will tell you that for them, abortion is something that is very simple, and it should be, especially the Democrats. The Republicans have a slightly different, because the policy variations between the two political parties. And therefore, each one of these political parties, depending on whether it is Trump or Harris who is going to become president of the US, there are those policy variations. And therefore, all these kinds of things put together, definitely, whichever way the election results go, the Americans would want as much as possible to have an Africa as a continent that replicates what they think is right, not only for them, but for the world. Because the Americans think that what they have in their country in terms of policies, whether it is trade, whether it is politics, whether it is, social, economic issues, should be replicated in the rest of the world. Now, when you look at the other players, political players on the globe, like the Chinese, like the Russians, and so many of those kinds of those countries, for them it is trade. They don't insist that everything that you do in your respective countries must be similar to what we do in the US. So the Russians are like that, the Indians are like that, the Chinese are like that, and the dynamics, in my view, on the globe are actually changing so fast. So these things which are happening in the US, the elections, depending on who wins those elections, will definitely have a variation. Of course, in a Trump, we have seen him before, from 2016 to 2020. He was there as president of the US. With Kamala, we have also seen, because she has been part and parcel of the Biden administration. And so we have seen what their policies are. Now, coming to Uganda, of course, I want just to pick one or two things, because we have been looking at Africa. But when it comes to Uganda, it speaks volumes about how the Trump administration treated Uganda as a country, and how the Biden administration also treated us. We have had more sanctions imposed on Uganda during the Biden-Kamala-Harris administration than when we had Trump and his vice president.
And Ambassador, on that point, I want us to return shortly after the break, and we look deeply into what it means if the Kamala-Harris administration takes power, and what it would mean like if Donald Trump does take power. Is there any difference in how the two governments or the two administrations will work for Africa, and how Africa will definitely benefit from each one of the two presidential candidates? We are still discussing matters USA elections 2024 and looking at what is at stake for the African continent in regards to international relations, implications for Africa's development and trade. Stick around.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Juko. Yo. Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Haven't you heard of the parish development model, PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a portrait project, and now things are moving.
Juko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. What you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
All right, we'll be back from the break and we continue with our conversation here of the US elections 2024, looking at what is at stake for Africa in terms of international relations, diplomacy, trade and development in general. Now on set this morning, we are also joined by Honorable Michael Sebalu, who does join us as well to understand and discuss more matters to do with Africa's stands in the United States elections 2024 and what we are to get from the same. Honorable Sebalu, you're most welcome to the show. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, and thank you for having me at the show. It's a pleasure joining you and joining my brother, Ambassador Maega. Good morning, viewers, and all those that are following us on the various social media platforms associated with this media house. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Pleasure is ours having you this morning. Let's get into this topic that we are having. What really lies ahead? From your point of view, what lies ahead for Africa as the United States is heading to the polls today?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sonko, for that question. Today, the American people are going to the polls to choose a leader that will lead that great nation for the next 4 years. It is a milestone, and it is something that is of great interest and attention, not only to the African continent, but to the whole world, given the role that the United States plays in global politics at the global arena and global scale. So it is of interest to Africa, it is of interest in the Middle East, it is of interest in Europe, it's of interest in Asia, so it is of interest globally. But for the African continent, I think we need to be ready for whoever is going to emerge. First, it is closely a contested election. You can see that it is too close to call. Up to now, people are like, is it Kamala, is it Trump? So at the end of the day, we are going to see who is going to carry the day. But as an African nation, an African continent, we need to be ready to work with either of the two. And in that case, we need to be firm on our position as a continent, on our individual positions as countries, but we need to have a collective outlook in terms of engagement. We've seen the two sides, definitely, and like you indicated, my brother has already clarified that, because we saw the Trump. The Trump era was there. I wouldn't say it was very friendly to the African continent, even in terms of diplomatic posturing and engagement, the language, the physical language, even the body language, looked like Africa was not so much on the top agenda. And some of the statements attributed to Trump during his tour of duty as the president in his first term were a little derogatory and really looking at Africans and as not so useful people who produce, people who don't have food. So we remember those kind of statements with nostalgia. And I don't think much has changed in terms of his outlook and his worldview of the African continent. Likewise, we've seen the Democrats under Biden and Kamala serving as the deputy president. We've been able to see what they've been able to do, their response to various African needs. I don't think fundamentally, again, much is going to change, because definitely they've been part of the same leadership. It may be a question of changing seats and responsibilities and decision making. So for me, what is most important for Africa is that we need to continue building internal capacity. We need to continue positioning in such a way that we develop our initiatives to be a little more independent. Definitely, the America being what it is, there's a lot we work with them in terms of support. Definitely, they support us in various ways, which you can't wish away. But at the end of the day, we need to progressively and increasingly build our internal capacity. We need to enhance our regional integration, like the East African integration, building stronger entities. We also need to give more thoughts to African integration so that we are able to tap into our internal and domestic and continental capabilities to build a strong and competitive continent where we can bargain collectively and put our foot and our claim within the global political space, both political economy and otherwise. So basically, we simply have to continue with our policy, our foreign policy and relations with America definitely is not likely to change. We cooperate and they support us in a number of ways. So basically, we just have to make the best out of whoever carries the day.
Okay, and Ambassador, when you look into the issues that Africa wants to be addressed, what are some of those? And then also, do you think whoever comes in next may affect those issues, or will they at least be heard more? Because Honorable Nsebalu mentioned something very critical here, is that when you look at what was happening during the Trump administration, how he was perceiving Africa was not as much as we expected him to perceive it. So when you look at some of the issues that we have that really need to be addressed, what are some of those? And does any administration affect or impact the decision making?
Of course, first of all, I would like to appreciate what my senior colleague, Honorable Nsebalu, has said, that the kinds of things that we expect from the Americans, whether it is Republicans who are in control or Democrats, are basically going to be to remain the same. You don't expect a lot of changes, whether it is Trump, whether it is Kamala Harris becoming president of the US. And that, in my view, definitely means that we have to be focused as Africa, as a continent, because everybody has said it before, that Africa is the future of the world. because most of our resources are untapped. You go to Europe and you don't find the resources because they have exhausted almost everything they had. In Africa, we have everything that it takes for a continent to uplift itself from poverty to higher levels of wealth, and so on and so forth. But of course, you're raising a very important question about what are the issues. The issues are basically the same. They have never changed. We are talking about trade. We are talking about political international relations. We are talking about investments. We are talking about other collaborations, for instance, in the fields of health and so on and so forth. So those are the issues, in my view, that we need to emphasize as African continent, particularly as Uganda. Because, for instance, when it comes to trade, the volume of trade, for instance, between Uganda and the US has been in the region of $160 million US, tilted far, far, far better for the US. In other words, we have a deficit in terms of trade with the US. They bring here much more than we can take to them. And that is replicated in the rest of the African countries when it comes to trade. When it comes to the politics, the international relations, as we know, the diplomacy between the US and the African countries or the African continent, it's basically, in my view, a little intrusive, where, for instance, if Uganda decided to pass into law the anti-homosexuality bill, the Americans are going to come back to you and target, for instance, the entire parliament as they did to us, and they impose sanctions and all this kind of stuff, and most especially when the Democrats are the ones who are in power. And so it's a very dicey situation that we have until, in my view, the Africans or African continent pulls up its socks and makes sure that it is equal to the job in as far as interactions on the international scene are concerned. But otherwise, the issues, in my view, are still trade. How can we trade, for instance, with the US as Africa, so that we earn more money and we recoup these monies that we've earned back into our respective economies so that our economies can grow? Is the trade fair? Don't we have tariffs? The other day, you remember, Uganda was cancelled out of the AGOA, again, over the same issues, as I've said before. Whether we are going to be reinstated, I don't know. But of course, the volume of trade between AGOA, between the US and Uganda, and as far as AGOA is concerned, was in the region of about $30 million US. Superimpose that to what we do in the region. For instance, with the DRC, the last time I checked, in 2024, the volume of trade between the DRC and Uganda was in the region of $59 million US. With Kenya, it is in the region of $1.3 billion US. With Sudan, until the war broke out in 2015, it was in the region of $1 billion US. So trade is one of the areas which we can emphasize with the Americans if they can agree with us, and we make sure that we send as much of our merchandise to the US as much as possible so that we can make money. Now, international relations, it has been more really intrusive, overarching. And as far as Africa is concerned, it would look as if the Americans are actually trying to dictate to us, whether it is Republicans, whether it is Democrats, but the Democrats are even more intrusive than the Republicans, in my view. And therefore, when it comes to international relations, we would require as Africa to have that balance in as far as international relations are concerned. FDIs, most of the FDIs, at least I worked in China from 2015 to 2019 at the embassy. And by the time I left in 2019, China was the biggest provider of foreign direct investment. And I'm not really trying to downplay what the Americans are playing or are doing in this country, because you and I know that the Americans are funding the health sector. They are funding a little bit of the security sector and quite a number of others, just to mention a few.
And Honorable Sevalu, there is an argument that our international trade relations with the US, not only Uganda, but the African continent, will highly depend on who wins because of how they approach, issues to do with trade. And of course, during his term as president, he has always been using the punchline of America first. So many people know he has to prioritize American interest globally. That is Donald Trump. And then when you look at also the Biden-Kamala Harris administration, there've been a couple of visits by African presidents to the US, and many are saying, well, the discussions were there, but not to the core finalization of the agreements where Africa benefits. So we need to know how true of a statement is that whoever wins this election there are chances that the trade relations may either grow or stay as they are.
Yeah, that is a very interesting dimension. But I think to get to that, you need to appreciate the philosophy behind the American kind of leadership. What is it that they put emphasis on as a country? Two things stand out. One, they must remain the police of the world. That is number one. It is, you don't compromise on that. They must influence, they must determine the trends, and they must create an overarching influence globally. So at a political level, within the international political space, they must do that. You remember what happened to Gaddafi? You know, those were Democrats. So you find that that is another position. Then the second one, again, which is of very much of interest to the Americans, the dollar must rhyme supreme. Their currency must dominate the world affairs in terms of trade, in terms of transactions, and in terms of everything. So once they've fixed the two, then they've got their machinery of dominance. The political authority and power and influence, then the American dollar as a currency that also dominates the world in the world of trade and in the world of global transactions. So in terms of trade, what I want to see is trade, but it may not be seen in the foreseeable future, not even in the next, but the best case scenario would be trade on equal terms. That would be most ideal. You know, we are trading, we are stakeholders, we have interests, you have what I need, I have what you need, let's do it on equal terms. But you find that trade is skewed in their favor. Their market is closed unless they open it. Even when they open it, it is up to a certain degree. It can never be an open market like it is around here, where they can have come and have whatever they want on the basis of negotiation and on the basis of bargaining. So their market is restricted. It is conditionally accessed. You find that you've passed a given law, and because of that, your access is limited or even denied outright. So basically, that is what you find a little disturbing. And that's why my view is that we need to appreciate the capacity on the continent, the intra-Africa trade. You know, we need to trade more with each other and one another on the African continent and build a critical mass of our engagement. And if you put together the volumes that can be accrued out of intra-African trade, it could offset quite a big chunk of what makes us submissive to certain big boys and big brothers out there. So basically, access to their market remains an issue that is largely influenced by Washington. It's not something that Uganda is largely going to influence. How much, what quality, what conditions, and what enabling environment is available for that to happen, all those are factors that are not likely to change when either of the two wins. So it is a question of this one may be a little more friendly, but it is within the wider perspective and interest of the American interest. Their interest comes supreme. The interests of any other entity globally come in secondary. So theirs are primary at the end of the day. So we simply have to continue engaging. I don't see a serious change of fundamental nature. It is only the degree that may vary. But largely, both have to serve the wider interest of America. And their interests may not necessarily be our interests. At the end of the day, we need to know our interests, how far we go, and maybe how best we relate globally in order to offset some of the dynamics that may not be as favorable as we may wish them to be. So at the end of the day, Africa is definitely not on the top priority of the US in terms of real priorities. It remains a stakeholder that they have to work with, and largely the policy framework is skewed in their favor. They quite gain a chunk, much more than we do. But at the end of the day, we are part of the global global community of nations, and we must always be ready and available to relate with any country within the community of nations.
Well, gentlemen, I would also like to pick your comment on the issue to do with immigration. This has become a concern for many African countries, and they feel, regardless of who wins, it seems it's never something discussed about. It never changes over the years, the involvement, and many also believe it might be worse in case one of the two gets in, depending on their agenda and how their administration works. I'll start with you, Ambassador, on that.
Well, thank you very much, because when we were studying geography, I think we were being taught about the pull and push factors. Because you make the conditions on the African continent so impoverished, that definitely is going to send so many people away from the continent to come actually at your doorsteps. And you remember what has been happening in Europe because of the insecurities that had been created, for instance, in Libya, as Honorable Sevali was talking about that country. And that insecurity actually has stretched into the interior of Africa and creating a corridor where refugees are streaming through and going to Europe. And at the end of the day, European countries have found themselves with lots of immigrants, and they've sought to sell some back to Africa. You remember what has been happening between the UK and Rwanda, and what has been happening between Hungary and Chad. That will give you some money, and then you receive so many of the African refugees, including actually refugees from elsewhere, including from those from the Middle East, and so on and so forth. And of course, the US itself has not been spared of that problem of immigration, and it's a very serious campaign issue, as you have seen in the past few months, where it hasn't been really something like it happened in Germany, where Germany was deliberately attracting refugees, but those who were trained, for instance, in IT, and at one point in time they wanted 1 million immigrants in Germany. And so there was that encouragement by the Angela Merkel administration in Germany for this to come. But in the US it's different, because it's just Kayole, everybody goes. And whether you're a criminal or not, and it's a very serious campaign issue, as you must have been following the politics and the campaigns in the US. And so for me, I wouldn't want to encourage people to leave their countries to go and stay in the US or elsewhere. That encouragement definitely is not something that is very good, having lived outside of my country for quite a bit of time. And I see what Ugandans go through when they immigrate to other countries. It's a very big problem, because you can't find status, you can't find a very good job, you can't find the necessary income to keep you going, and all these kinds of things. So it's better that actually everybody strives to create conditions on the African continent so that people don't immigrate, including ourselves. We must, for instance, make the African continent secure. We must make the economic conditions good and sound for everybody to benefit from them, and so many other things. Likewise, even the US itself and other countries in Europe, if they don't want people to immigrate from Africa and go to their respective countries, they must ensure that conditions on the ground are actually conducive so that people stay on this continent and they don't have to run away. It's better that way, if they don't want that issue of immigration to arise. Of course, Uganda has got one of the best refugee policies in the world, and that's why we have something like 1.7 million refugees from most especially the neighboring countries, and so on and so forth. So it's not a good idea that people would have to leave the continent and go to other countries. It is better we create conditions on the ground so that people can remain here, we struggle here, we hustle here, and make ends meet, in my view.
Okay, and Honorable Sevalu, that issue.
First, on that one, I think I wouldn't blame the American government so much. Every country must have a policy in terms of who to accept, who to attract, and who not to attract, what quantity, what quality. I think it is within their democratic right and sovereign right as a country to determine who goes and who doesn't. But what is very interesting is that America is a country made up of immigrants. It's an immigrant community. If you ask me an original American, you'll hardly get any. You find Afro-American, you find Irish American, you find Jewish American. It is basically a country that was made up of immigrant communities and populations. So I would expect it to be most attractive to immigrants and appreciate them, but also guide the level and modus operandi of accessing it with legislation and policy framework that is helpful in that regard. Just like Canada is doing, Canada is attracting quite a number of professionals, young people qualified. You know, they are given citizenship and they are given access to employment. They are having a big aged population where now they need some young people to boost the activities of production and all that. So you find they are doing it and doing it in a very orderly manner, and people have clear processes they go through in order to access. Such can apply in any country in the world, including the US, but definitely it has taken a level that is highly politicized. I don't think it needs to get to that. It's highly politicized to the extent that it becomes a campaign issue, and there are cases where the language used is very demeaning and very derogatory. So I think it has taken a trend that is most undesirable, given that people moving across the globe is something that should be of interest to the global community, because there are conditions that make it impossible for people to stay in their places of abode, where they have to move and go to other places. A case in point is in Uganda. Uganda was at one point a net exporter of refugees, you know, through the times. Right now, Uganda is a net importer of refugees, and we are very celebrated in that regard. We have one of the most progressive refugee policies in the world, and we've been able to coexist with these people, because when someone takes on to be a refugee, usually it is a condition that may not be withstood. And so as a civilized community of nations, we should be able to appreciate people in such circumstances and create enabling environment to have them attracted to our jurisdictions.
Okay. Well, indeed, and the question does remain again. Will it be the radical and conservative Republicans taking power in the US for the next 4 years, or will it be the Democrats under Kamala Harris to take charge of the United States in the next presidential term? But that said, this conversation of ours does come to an end. And of course, my two guests this morning, one has been Ambassador Henry Maiga, who has been joining us as well. Thank you very much for joining us, Ambassador.
Thank you very much.
And with him is Honorable Michael Sebalu, who has also joined us this morning to discuss more of the US elections and their implications on the African continent. Again, thank you very much, Honorable, for joining us.
Most welcome.
And in that same spirit, we shall be giving you more updates, not only from the bulletins on UBC, but also here on the morning show, to ensure that we keep you up to speed with the USA elections until the final day of announcement of who will be heading to the White House and whose administration will be taking over the United States for the next 4 years. That does it for the agenda this morning. Coming up is Ruben Pima Chivirango with the latest from sports.